Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Trusting God isn't easy. It always sounds nice in theory, but when life gets hard, like when things aren't working, when the future seems super uncertain, and when you follow a prompting and you expect it to go one way and it goes in a complete opposite way, that's when faith feels impossible. But I've got some good news. Jesus actually showed us how to trust God, even in the scariest moments. And I haven't seen anyone talk about it in the way that I'm about to tell you. And once you understand what he did, I think it's going to change everything for you. To set this up, there's this great moment where Jesus is with his friends, the disciples, on a boat. All of a sudden, a storm comes in, winds howling, waves are crashing on the ship, and the disciples start getting worried. And we have to remember that some of these disciples are fishermen. So they know when things are dangerous. And amidst all this commotion, what was Jesus doing? Well, he was sleeping. Now you might wonder, like I did, how in the world could Jesus sleep amidst a storm when there are fishermen on the boat worrying that they're going to die? How was he so at rest, literally, when everything around him was chaos? And more importantly, how can we experience that same kind of peace and rest? Because when storms arise outside of us, they trigger the storms inside of us. You know, those moments when we feel powerless and it doesn't even seem like God is there. How do we experience peace in that? So I've spent years reflecting on faith, talking to God about fear, and learning about trust. And not just from the scriptures, but from my own personal experience, from talking with other experts, and from helping a lot of other people work through their own fears and their own challenges. And in everything that I've learned, I want to share something super important. Faith is not just about believing in God, because a lot of people say they believe in God, but rather faith is about being the kind of person that actually listens to God and follows what he says. Now, I want to explain this further because if you can really get this, then it can change everything for you. And I want to split it up into 3 parts. In part 1, I want to get into the brain science behind fear and why it even happens. In part 2, I want to tell you what faith really looks like as exemplified by Jesus. And then in part 3, I want to share how you can build unshakable trust so that no matter what happens in your life, you can approach it from this place and this power of peace and rest. So let's start with fear. Scientists share how we are all born with 2 innate fears. One is the fear of loud noises, and the other is the fear of falling. Every other fear is learned. For example, we've got black widow spiders at our house, and the only reason that my kids know to be afraid of them is because I told them that they're dangerous. You know, babies don't really crawl around and are scared of spiders or snakes. They just are curious. Now, I want you to think about the things that you're scared of. Maybe making mistakes in front of other people. It's talking on stage. Maybe it's just the fear of being alone or any worry that you might have about the future. And I want you to think to yourself, where did this come from? Where did I learn this? And before you start searching your memory, I want to highlight something. The scientists who help people get rid of fears, they do so through a process called fear extermination. Or is it fear extinction? And really, this process is about repeatedly facing your fears so that your brain gets the message that you're not going to die. So if you're afraid of speaking to strangers, then you go out every day talking to strangers, and eventually you'll get to the place where you're not afraid to talk to them. One researcher put it this way: extinction, or getting rid of fear, is not forgetting a memory, it's actually forming a new memory. We can't actually change the past, but we can change our story about the past. We can have a fresh view of talking to strangers or speaking on stage or of spiders. And this renewing and refreshing of our mind is literally the definition of repentance. It's about a new way of thinking. And because we don't receive fresh thinking from God very often, most all of our thoughts are actually memory. It's a thought you've had before from your past. So when the disciples are on the boat and there's waves crashing in, they're likely thinking, this is bad, this is dangerous. They're operating from their past training and learning instead of connecting to a God who wants to teach them something in this moment. And according to the science, when your brain perceives a threat, the part of your brain that's responsible for creativity literally shrinks. Your brain and body go to work to give you more oxygen, more blood to either one, fight the threat, like scooping water out of the boat, flee the threat, which is like jumping out of the boat and swimming to safety. 3, freeze and don't do anything, hoping that the storm will pass. Or 4, which is called fawn, which is all about how can I people please everybody on this boat so that if we have to throw someone out, it's not going to be me. Now, these reactions are totally human and totally normal. I don't blame the disciples for acting the way that they did, but Jesus showed us a different way of approaching the storm. And this is where we get into part 2. What does faith really look like? If we look at the example of Jesus Christ, there's really only one moment where we can tell whether Christ was actually afraid. And that's the moment where he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's praying, and he says this, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Christ's ultimate expression of love and surrender and trust was in one word, nevertheless. In other words, everything that was human within him resisted and was hesitant to move forward in that pain that he knew was coming. But he trusted. He trusted in a Father who knew what to do and who knew what Christ was capable of. And right now, your fears and your doubts and everything that's burdening you right now, your storm, might feel super overwhelming. And it may not be clear how this is all working for your good, but faith means trusting that still small voice that says, it's going to be okay. You can do this. I'm with you. I love this definition of faith, and let me read it to you. Faith is to have confidence in something or someone. The Lord has revealed himself and his perfect character, possessing in their fullness all the attributes of love, knowledge, justice, mercy, unchangeableness, power, and every other needful thing, so as to enable the mind of man to place confidence in him without reservation. In other words, because God is all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful, we can have confidence that no matter what happens in our life, he can turn things around. He can heal any wound, he can comfort any heartache, and he can even raise us from the dead if needed. A friend of mine learned deeply about this when he went through one of the hardest times of his life. He suffered from severe depression and anxiety, having about 4 to 5 panic attacks a day, something that his psychiatrist said was the most he had ever seen in a person. So life for him felt unbearable. It was like a storm that seemed like there was no way out. But one day, as he lay in bed, he had a vision. He saw Jesus, not in a place of peace, but in a boiler room. His face was covered with grease and sweat, and he wore an apron as he worked tirelessly, lifting heavy boxes and putting them on this conveyor belt that led straight into the fire. Confused, my friend asked, "What are you doing?" And Jesus answered, "There are parts of you that need to go. I am doing a work of healing within you." So box by box and piece by piece, Christ was healing him by burning away the guilt, the shame, the burdens he was carrying. And this moment became an anchor for him, reminding him that even in the fire of life, Christ was with him, doing a deep work within. And maybe that's where you are now. Maybe the fear feels overwhelming. Maybe you don't see a way out, but the message is the same. Keep going. You're not alone. I'm right here with you, and I'm doing a work within you. I'm not going to leave you in this storm. Now let's talk about part 3, how to build unshakable trust in God. Unshakable trust begins with the foundational belief that God is for you, that he is always working for your good, even in the hardest moments. Because without this belief, every hardship that you go through is going to be interpreted through a default lens of bad things happen to me. When it rains, it pours. This is just proof that I've failed and that I'm not good enough, that something's wrong with me. This always happens to me, or I'm just not doing life right. And this kind of experience relates to what psychologists call black and white thinking, which is the tendency for us to think in the extremes. Either life is good or life is bad. Either God is a blessing and he's with me, or he doesn't care and he's super distant. Either you're on the right path and everything's working out, or you've completely failed and it's all your fault. Now, a key point is that our relationship with God is not to be found in results. It's found in the journey. And trust is built when we recognize that God is in the process of our lives, not just the results. And I'll give you a concrete example. Think of Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. From the outside, people would say that his life wasn't going too great. But in every moment, God was positioning him for something greater. God turned a series of unfortunate events into power, influence, and transformation for an entire population. And the same can be true for you. What if the difficulties you're facing right now aren't signs that God is abandoning you, but proof that he's refining you, strengthening you, and preparing you for something more? Trust isn't just believing in God when things are easy. It's choosing to believe when things are hard. It's saying, even in this, I trust you. Because he is not just a God of blessings, he is a God of redemption. The God who takes broken, painful, and seemingly hopeless situations and turns them into something beautiful and powerful. So what if instead of asking, God, why is this happening to me? You were to ask, God, what do you want me to learn from this? What do you want me to know in this? And what if you were to let go of the idea that you've done something wrong and instead embrace the truth that God is still with you, even in this, even here, even now, because he is and always will be. Now, here's the truth. I used to be just like the disciples. I have relied on my past experiences and training to determine how I react to different situations. I actually used to meticulously plan my calendar, squeezing every minute out of every day. It was kind of my way of maintaining control while also getting a lot of stuff done. But the cost was immense. I would literally shake with anxiety and fear every time I took a break for lunch because I was consumed by the thought of everything still left to do and the overwhelming sense that there was never enough time. I kind of lived in this constant state of not enough, gripped by the fear of what would happen if I got behind or if I failed. Peace felt completely out of reach. And it wasn't until I understood what Christ demonstrated on the boat that I was able to break free from this scarcity mindset. Because when the storm raged and the disciples were scared, Jesus was calm. He wasn't even startled when they woke him up. Instead, he first spoke peace to the storm and then told them that their fear wasn't about their circumstances. It was about trust. He asked, "Where is your faith?" In other words, it's as if Christ was saying, I knew God wasn't going to let this storm take us because I asked him and he told me that everything was going to be okay. And you can do the same thing too. You can talk to God and receive that same assurance. All you have to do is ask him, even amidst the storms. So how do we build this trust, the kind of unshakable trust that Christ demonstrated? It comes down to two key things. One, rewiring past beliefs. And this is all about unlearning the experiences and training that keep you in the scarcity mentality and led you to doubt God's protection and provision in the first place. And two is practicing trust now, which is all about learning how to listen and surrender every day, even in the chaos. When you do these two things, your faith becomes unshakable. Fear loses its grip, and you no longer feel the need to control everything outside of you because you know deep down that you're supported and you're held. And these two steps are at the heart of my work. I help people develop this skill of trust every single day. And one of the best ways that you can start working on this skill is by joining the Receive Academy, which is a free community that I've created where we can all come together and practice these steps of listening and trusting. So if you're ready to experience this for yourself, not just as a theory or something that you talk about on Sunday and say that would be nice to have, I just want to invite you to join us. Your journey to unshakable trust can start today. Your ability to feel calm amidst whatever storm comes up can start now. Just go down to the link below and come on over. I'd love to see you.